Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all are safe and warm after the nor'easter that's happened a couple of days ago. We're still feeling the after effects in Massachusetts, but I hope everyone's doing all right. I recently just got a haircut, as you guys can probably see, so I'm feeling fresh, I'm feeling clean, feeling like a new man, and I'm ready to do a couple of videos. Uh, but first off, a couple of housekeeping things. First off, I know I was supposed to put a video out on Saturday or Sunday last week. Fortunately, I didn't have enough time to get it done. Mainly do a couple things at work, as well as just trying to put up the easier to run video. If you haven't seen that yet, I highly recommend it because I loved doing that one, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. So that's not going to change the number of videos I'm going to be doing this week. This is technically the one from last weekend that I should supposed to put up, but I'm still going to do a cover video on Friday, and either Saturday or Sunday I'm going to put out another Are You In? Most likely Sunday, since I'm working all day Saturday. Second thing, I have a couple of album reviews I still want to do from 2016, and I've done a couple of them already. Most of these were albums that just missed the top 10 in 2016, and since I didn't really go over any of those other than the top 10, I'm focusing my time here. So that's what you're going to be seeing tonight and on Sunday. The two last 2016 albums that I wanted to talk about. Then it's going to be a mixture of a couple different things. First off, it's going to be 2017 albums that I didn't get to talk about in my top 50, or ones that I barely talked about. Maybe spent a minute or two, and I want to do more of a flushed out album review. And then there's also going to be the 2018 albums, of course, I'm going to review. I just haven't heard many right now that I'm very interested in, or ones that seem to be interesting for album reviews. So I'm holding off for a minute. And that's also because I haven't been listening to as much 2018 as I should, because I'm also focusing on what the third thing is going to be, which is these discography reviews I've been talking about, where I'm doing full discography reviews of certain bands. So I've been focusing on 2018 albums as well as these full discographies. Now they're all going to be coming out interchangeably. Hopefully the idea will be that I either put out two Are You Ins in general, one that's a 2017 or a discography one, and one that's a 2018, but it will mix and match, just depending on how much time I have to record. And of course, I'll still try to throw in some cover songs in the meantime. But anyways, that's all the business I'd have to talk about for right now, so let's dive into this video's edition of Are You In? And for tonight, I'm talking about Periphery's latest album, Periphery 3 Select Difficulty. Now, for those of you who don't know who Periphery are, they are a progressive metal / gent band from Washington, D.C. Now, gent is a subgenre of progressive metal that is known for its rhythmic and technical complexity, and it's also usually layered with some polyphonic grooves. Now what that basically means is just multiple sounds at once, and they usually create different polyrhythms, and basically what that means is, say you have a beat that's 4/4 or common time. You might have a polyphonic beat that is hits every 3 beats, or every 5 beats, and makes for this interesting rhythmic difference. And that's something that you usually hear in gent and progressive metal. The actual name for gent came from the onomatopoeia sound for the distinctive high-gain, distorted, palm-muted, low-pitched guitar sound used in this certain style. The other thing kind of known for this style is that they don't necessarily just stick with standard electrical guitars. You get anything from 7 to 8 to 9 string guitars in this style. So Periphery is one of the pioneers of the later version of gent, though they do not like being called that, because gent, for the most part, there's a argument about whether it's its own subgenre or just a part of progressive metal itself. But anyways, that's how you can label them in general. The members include Misha Mansour on guitars and programming, Jake Bowen, guitars, programming, and backing vocals, Matt Halpern on drums, Spencer Sotelo on lead vocals, and Mark Holcomb on guitars. So basically the way that they set this band up, they have the lead singer, the drummer, and these three guitarists slash programmers who basically interchange what they're doing. They can be anything from a bass guitar and a lead guitar and another lead guitar to whatever you will, and that creates some interesting sounds and interesting concepts for guitar parts in general. So technically this band has had 4 albums previously, though they do kind of put 2 of them together because they were a double album. So you have Periphery in 2010, Periphery 2, This Time It's Personal in 2012, Juggernaut Alpha and Juggernaut Omega, both coming out in 2015. Now, I heard about them through, I was looking up some more progressive artists to listen to because I was in need to fill this dearth that I had of progressive metal in my life. And I found them, and I found out Juggernaut Alpha, listened to it, really liked it. Fortunately, I have not listened to anything else since. But when I found out, going through my albums at 2016, that Periphery was putting out an album, I was like, this seemed like an awesome time to try to listen to them again. So, what did I think of it? So, first, let's go through some pros. The biggest thing that stands out to me on this album is the lyrics. And the reason for that is it's some of the best lyrics I've heard in quite some time, in the use of imagery, in the use of just the brutalness of it, and just a lot of really cool phrases and stuff like that. For example, you have the first song, The Price Is Wrong. You know, it's not a great song for me personally. I know it was nominated for a Grammy a couple years ago for Best Metal Performance, but personally, not a huge fan of it. But what saves it for me is some of the lyrics in it that are just so brutal and so descriptive for what this song is talking about. This song is about an older generation talking about a younger generation, or vice versa, and just talking about how if they feel like they can't get through to this generation because they're idiots or stuff like that, and it's very descriptive. For example, you have, I'm feeling the slap of 1,000 shit brains. Like, that's a very descriptive line. And you'll also have, I'll drown before the fucking ship hits the ocean floor, and thank God I'm not alive to see the slack-jawed generation spread its fucking seed. Like, that, if that is not clear on just how much this person hates the certain group that they're talking about, I don't know what is. So, like, it's a powerful opener. It's a heavy opener. Personally, I don't like it a lot because it's a lot of screaming and not much clean vocals, but the lyrics themselves save that. Same thing with the next song, Motormouth. Motormouth, not a great song, but there's some descriptive lyrics in here, and they're talking about the idea of social media and the vanity of it, and, you know, a perfect line for that is, paint your face, now pose and filter the mute, give it all you got, you're just one click away from the fame now. You know, that's a descriptive line of people being vain and talking about how they need to set up perfectly everything so that they believe that their life is perfect. You know, these lyrics save mediocre songs, and they make other songs better. Another mediocre song in terms of just sound itself is Flatline Uh, it's not mediocre per se of just like being lazy, but it's mediocre because it's an interesting sound because it has two distinct parts, one heavier and one slower. And the heavier part works, except for it kind of sometimes goes into weird color and modal changes that just makes it feel abrupt to how they got there. And then the other part is much slower, and it'll make you wonder, like, how did we get here? Um, so at first I didn't like the song, but then I read into the lyrics, and it's the lyrics themselves make this a very interesting song because it's a song about talking about depression and talking about anxiety and suicide, and taking it from the lens of someone who's on the edge and breaking down, who's close to the flat line. And it's talking about wondering how this person is feeling at that moment. And that's in the first part of it, of just talking about if we could see into this person's mind, how would they feel? And even there in the chorus, it takes the aspect of that line of like what this person would say. And then on the second part, depending on how you read into it, either this person is coming down from the flat line of the depression, or fortunately the flat line of suicide. It it could either be a morose or a hopeful feeling. If it's the side of the depression coming from the flat line of it, another one coming back from the flat line, then it's more hopeful because it's talking about depression. You can hit a bottom, but that doesn't mean it's the end. Unfortunately, other side, it's a little bit more morose, talking about the end with suicide. And if that's the case, it's calling out for we all need to be better because we need to save one another from the flat line. So just being able to look into this as a topic, like even if you don't hear that in the lyrics at first because your ear takes you away from it because of the interesting arrangement, reading through it makes it more interesting and more of a highlight on this album than I first thought. So again, lyrics phenomenal on this album. Second thing that stands out for me is Sotelo's singing on this and screaming. And the biggest thing is, if we compare it to Polly's lyrics as well as vocals on Defy, what I talked about last week, it shows that there is a stark contrast. And the reason why Sotelo's lyrics and vocals work and Polly's don't is, again, the lyrics are much better on this, but also the arrangements are more interesting on the Periphery side. The lyrics weren't great for Of Mice and Men, and because of that, the music wasn't great. And when both of those things aren't great, it has to put a focus on the voice. And as much as Polly did to try to make interesting clean vocals and interesting screaming, it just became monotonous because there wasn't anything behind it that was interesting. Whereas because of the way the music works and the lyrics work around Sotelo's vocals, it makes his part shine out more. You get parts like on The Way the News Goes, in this bridge part where he's just doing very high notes that sound awesome, and the power in them are so good, especially after the lower points of the song where he's a little bit more mellow. And this is another one where it's talking about the monotony of the world and depression, and like just the way that the power in which he is singing these parts makes it feel like he's interpreting them and he's feeling them. And there's one, again, in terms of lyrics, there's another one where it's has some interesting lyrics in it, talking about the monotony of the world, and Tears march to lullabies and beat me like a drum. It's not your average fucking misery. This heart has chords, but not a single one sounds new or fun. Hit strings and dissonance, pick on and on and on. And it's just talking about like a cool musical allegory of this, or metaphor, if you will, where it's talking about stale music. The beats aren't great. The chords aren't great. They're just dissonant instead of whole and consonant. And that's a cool way of bringing out the idea of depression and agony and monotony of the world, and just all that encompasses into a really, really awesome song. And then another big thing that makes this CD work so well is Halpern's drumming on it. He drums phenomenally on this album. He does his double bass drum pedals when he needs to, and he can do it fast when he really needs to. He's a very technical drummer. But one particular song that I want to point out on that kind of encompasses all three of these things: the lyrics, the music, Halpern's drumming, and Sotelo's vocals, is the last song on the album. Now, throughout the album, they had been kind of hinting at this song, Loon, and you hear it on The Way the News Goes, and you hear it on Absalom, these little interludes right at the end, where the first one, it's a piano playing one of the parts, and then it's the second time it's an orchestrated piece of this same idea. And I'm glad that they did that, because it makes it builds up the hype for the last song, and it didn't need any hype, but it's an awesome song to end. Such an amazing arrangement, such amazing lyrics. It starts with some elapsing kind of guitar sound, where it kind of echoes out, and then the bass part comes in, and then the drums come in, and then the vocals come in, and it builds and builds and builds throughout the song. And Halpern's drummings on this makes it feel more like a singer, or having a melody rather than being a part of time, if you will. It's really cool just how the drum intersperses with the melody, and it makes it feel sometimes like a part of that melody, and makes it sometimes feel like a counter melody. And I think that's really cool, to be able to take your drumming into that sphere, to be able to tell a story rather than be just a thing that keeps time. I'm actually going to put a video for that, of a drum cover of that by Halpern himself, because I think it's really cool to see how he approaches his drumming. This song's in 7/4, and the cool thing about it is, you feel the way that he's drumming. He picks up his drumsticks at points to sing, make the certain part have a little bit more meaning right before going back into the beginning of the next measure for the 7/4. And it's just you can tell the amount of technical work he's doing, but also the emotion that he's putting into this particular part of the drumming. So again, another awesome part there. And then the vocals themselves and the lyrics themselves work so well, because again, throughout the part, Sotelo starts slow, starts low, and then as you get to the first chorus, it builds emotion. The harmonies are interesting. Right when you get to the end of the first chorus, you have the chord progression come back in, and it's a D minor chord, and then you have the knife being sung as a harmony right underneath that, and then going up to the minor third, which is another cool little tidbit thing that you might miss the first time, but the second time around, it's really cool to hear it to hit your ear, and it just keeps building, and that matches so much with the lyrics, because the lyrics is talking about a two people in a long distance relationship coming together again for the first time in a very long time, and embracing and feeling the love and never wanting to let it go. And I've been there in points, so like I completely understand that feeling, and like this song solidifies it so well. Even the name of this song works so well because loon, um, for those of you who don't know, it's a geometric term, and it's the idea of this little area um, that's made when you interlap two circles. It's this little area that's found in between it, and it kind of just like in an imagery sense, kind of reminds me of two people. First like they're away, and then they come together, and they embrace, and it's almost coming into one. But there is still that knowing that eventually this might come back out again, and that will have to leave. But just this little area where for a little bit of time they can be who they are and love each other. That's an amazing way of looking at this song. Like from beginning to end, it's not a 7 minute song, but none of it's dull. Even the ending part with the harmonies, and it has a really cool chord progression that alternates between F and A minor for a little bit, and then goes to B flat, D flat, and G flat. Just an awesome, awesome song, and that's where all these pros come together in such a great way. There's other little examples I can use talking about awesome drumming or awesome use of lyrics or awesome use of the voice, but that's where everything comes to a head. And like most of this album is solid on either one of two or three of those things. But unfortunately, there are some cons. The first one, like the main one that steps out for me, is sometimes the arrangements can be a little bit too obscure in the ideas, and if someone can't go on with it, then it becomes hard to listen to. The biggest one, honestly, for me, there's two big ones for me that kind of fit in that pattern. Remain Indoors, good song, but the lyrics aren't great because they repeat themselves a lot, and the arrangement feels like it's going to stop at one point and then keeps going in a weird sense. Because of it, it makes it become one of my weaker songs on the album. It's still great, but it's weaker. But the one that actually oversteps this, ironically, is called Habitual Line Stepper. And this particular one is a 7 minute song that both the music and the lyrics feel a little bit convoluted. Feels like it's a lot of different ideas thrown together, and you don't always work. You within like the first 2 or 3 minutes, you get like three different feels in time, and all these different color changes, and it also feels like these lyrics kind of fit the same pattern where like you don't know where it's going, and because of that, you don't know what you're listening to. It's interesting, but you never get a hold of what you should be listening for, what you should be listening to. And then it gets to a point where it's 5 minutes in, and you feel like, oh my god, it's going to be done yet, and they still have 2 minutes left. So that's where the weakest part of the album is. It's not lazy. It's not bad. It's just interesting without. It's too interesting for its own good, and then it becomes a problem because it doesn't have anywhere to go, any structure, any direction, and that's where I would say the biggest con can be. But so like in terms of a progressive metal album, sometimes it's not hugely approachable because of that. But on the whole, it's a really good album. I praise a lot of the work on it. Some really good vocals, some really good lyrics, some really good drumming, some really cool arrangements, some subtle rhythmic changes. You get a part in Flatline where at that slow part it alternates between 10/4 and 9/4, which is really cool. You get a little bit of parts where it's a subtle 5/8 over like while like the lyrics still like try to make it feel 4/4. Um, there's some really approachable songs. Um, Loon being 7/4, Marigold being 7/8, I believe. Like, there's some approachable songs for starters, but again, there are. It's not a perfect CD because there are some ones that are a little bit too much screaming vocals, or ones that just feel a little bit out of place, or too convoluted for its own good. So for people that I would recommend this to, if you're a Periphery fan, you're gonna love this. If you're a progressive metal fan in general, I think you would like this too. If you're a gent fan, of course, you're gonna love this. Um, if you're someone who's trying to get into progressive metal or a gent, you might not want to listen to the whole entire album, but I could definitely recommend a couple of songs on here that would get you into the door, and then from there, see if you like it. I mean, honestly, as much as I don't like it, I think "The Price Is Wrong" is still not a bad song to like get your idea in terms of the songs that aren't clean vocals. I think that's a pretty approachable song. The way the news goes is very approachable. Um, Marigold is very approachable. Uh, Catch Fire is extremely approachable. It's basically their closest thing to a slow ballad, if you will, the most simplistic song on the CD, but still has a lot of really cool ideas because of the harmonies on there. Um, Loon is definitely approachable. You got about like 5 or 6 songs that are very approachable, and that's half of the CD. So from there, you might throw out, you might take a second and listen to the rest of the CD. So I would highly recommend this for a lot of people. Just know it's not perfect, and know that there is some convoluted stuff on there. But that is my review for today. It was a little bit longer than some of my other ones, but it's because I had a little bit more to talk about and some things to cover in general. So if you do like this, of course, take a minute to like the video, comment on what you would like to see me do better, as well as other CDs you would like me to review. Subscribe to this channel, just so you can stay in touch with everything I'm going to be doing, as well as know that what I'm doing is something that you like in general. Share it with your friends, and in general, just keep in touch with what I'm doing. So again, this video tomorrow I'm going to do a cover song, and then Sunday look out for another Are You In? My final one from 2016. So until then, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.